This stone carving shows the Assyrian military machine in motion, archers firing and soldiers scaling siege ladders. By the late 8th century BC, they were methodically crushing every nation in their path. This hexagonal prism's cuneiform script records the Assyrian king's direct decrees. His message to King Hezekiah was absolute: surrender or face annihilation. This relentless army did not negotiate. They conquered, and they had the historical records to prove it. For Judah, traditional military defense was useless. Against this kind of empire, earthly military power was completely insufficient, leaving the nation entirely defenseless in worldly terms. Upon receiving news of this impending doom, instead of mobilizing troops, Hezekiah tore his royal robes and put on coarse sackcloth. This was a deliberate, profound act of deep spiritual repentance before God, a move that prioritized spiritual alignment over physical defense. Outside the city walls, the Assyrian commanders were screaming threats and loudly boasting of their conquests. Inside, Hezekiah walked quietly into the sacred space of the temple. Confronted by this unstoppable force, Hezekiah demonstrated a counterintuitive truth: spiritual warfare begins with radical humility. Hezekiah did not try to carry this burden alone. He immediately dispatched his most trusted officials to find the prophet Elijah, asking him to pray for the survival of their nation. This diagram illustrates the mechanics of intercession. A central figure, Hezekiah, reaches out to a spiritual advocate, who then connects their unified plea directly to God. The prophet returned with a clear, divine response. God had heard the blasphemous insults hurled by the enemy, and Hezekiah had no reason to fear them. Look at this carving of the seated Assyrian ruler. The prophecy laid out exact terms targeting him directly. The Assyrians would be forced to retreat, and their king would die by the sword in his own land. By seeking out godly counsel and intercession, Hezekiah shifted his focus away from human desperation, securing his confidence and divine certainty. Despite that promise, the Assyrians aggressively escalated their psychological warfare. They began bluffing, trying to break Judah's internal morale before they even breached the walls. They targeted the Israelites' faith specifically, listing all the nations they had destroyed and boldly claiming that not even God had the power to save Jerusalem from Assyrian hands. This small clay seal bears Hezekiah's actual historical mark. Standing firmly in his legitimate authority, he took those written insults right back into the temple, laying them out directly before God. Hezekiah's plea reached beyond his own survival. He asked for salvation so that all the kingdoms of the earth would recognize God's absolute sovereignty. When the enemy's threats were at their loudest, Hezekiah showed that steadfast faith requires anchoring your confidence completely in God's ultimate authority. As the sun set, the Assyrian encampment buzzed with the chaotic, boastful energy of an army expecting an easy victory. Then the night went completely, divinely silent. Without a single human battle cry, an angel of God swept through the camp. In one night, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were struck down. The surviving forces woke to absolute devastation. The arrogant Assyrian king had no choice but to gather what remained of his decimated army and begin a humiliating retreat. The final detail of the prophecy fell into place shortly after. Upon returning to his own country, the Assyrian king was assassinated by his own sons. It did not matter how invincible his earthly military appeared. When human pride directly challenged divine sovereignty, it was instantly shattered. The morning light revealed a preserved Jerusalem. Judah was entirely safe, all without a single Israelite lifting a sword. This historical deliverance perfectly illustrates the teaching found in the book of James. The prayer of a righteous person is uniquely powerful and effective. Hezekiah's response modeled a specific spiritual response to disaster. Rather than matching worldly aggression, the path begins with repentance, prayer, and waiting. That waiting requires unwavering faith. It means trusting the timeline of God's intervention, over rushing to create your own worldly solutions. No matter how terrifying or impossible your circumstances appear, God remains perfectly in control, and His deliverance is ultimate.